So my name is Irina Danilova, and I am an artist, and I am honored recipient of Vilcek Foundation dARTboard, the first recipient. And I would like to talk about a little bit about my projects that were selected by Vilcek Foundation, and also about my background as an artist. I was born in Soviet Ukraine. I raised in Soviet Ukraine and lived in Moscow for several years before I came to United States. Now I live in New York. There are three projects that were selected, my digital projects. It's Constellation, National and Geographic projects, and also city drawings. I would like to talk about all these three projects, and they all belong to one big project, which is ongoing project, Project 59. I usually get questions about number, why this project has this number, and the answer is that it started in 1995 when I just flipped number and 95 into 59. Why I flipped them? Because 95 was pretty close to 100, and I was looking for some random number that would not have any particular meanings, and 95 was too close to 100, which has by itself a lot of attachments, meaning of percentage and $100 and many more. And of course, it was not good because it was also be able to divide by 5. And 5, when you come from Soviet Union, 5 is pretty political number. It was a 5-year plans in a country. It also we had grades from 1 to 5 in school. There was different organization based on 5. 5 was a symbol of the star of the Kremlin, and least I wanted, of course, too many attachments, so it was not good for project. So project was 59. I started with the quote 95 as bread and butter. 59 is butter, bread, the same. It was designed for 1 year because I entered School of Visual Arts MFA program in 1994, and I figured that I, on the top of different things that I had to face at that moment, at that year when I first moved to New York in the summer of '94, it was a lot of logistics and limited English and a lot of different regular problems. On the top of that, I was supposed to work on one project during my MFA years, and in '96, in spring of '96, I was supposed to write paper on it. And I didn't have any idea what kind of project I'm going to work. New York was totally different city from any I lived before, and I decided that I need something flexible, and that's why basically I saw that number is quite flexible and the most abstract notion from many ways. And 59 was group number because it was prime number. It was not divided by anything else. It was kind of like as random number as I could imagine. And project started at that point. So literally project started in '94, late '94, when I started my SV program, and first things were developed and made in probably November, December of '94, but it was project continued in '95, and the problem was with this project that it didn't finish. It didn't stop in the end of '95. I remember some kind of panic. What should I do? Like in '96 with my 59 project, which is not bread and butter anymore. But generally, it was transfer was quite smooth because a lot of projects were still running into '96, and it didn't stop till now. So it's still running, and I don't even. I'm not waiting for stop. It stops when it stops, but so far it's still alive and going on. When I started this project, it's also a lot of different aspects of this project that's very important for me, and one of them, probably the most important, is actually making art or making something for nothing. And it may sound silly, but it's basically, for me, it's the highest point of motivation when somebody does something for nothing. And devoting a whole entire project into to this, it was actually quite important for me at the point. And also, this project was kind of like devoted to a generation of older generations that came from from Soviet Union, and including my parents, generation of my parents, people who were raising me, brought me up, and among them were many. I call myself product of social system, and they were definitely products of social system. In other words, they were idealists. They were, believing that it was the best country in the world. And the best country in the world, for example, like my mother, who was all her life she was a high school teacher, and her reason for best country was because of it was free education, and it was equality, and it was, of course, a lot of principles that she followed and all her life. And while I, for example, I was growing up in Soviet Union, but my adulthood fell on kind of perestroika years, and my generation of my parents, they started to retire at that point. So for them, it was quite bitter to realize when all the truth came out. Truth not only about the rest of the world, that was quite nice, we didn't have any knowledge of that, but also truth about itself and our country itself, and all these things that happened. So it was a bitter for her to realize that all her life was kind of driven by false ideals. And so that project, to start project that would emphasize what people are doing and not what they're doing for, that was important for me to kind of like defend this generation, kind of lost generation from Soviet Union. And that's why, because it was actually, I was putting on one scale, I was putting a whole entire generation, and another scale, it was a new project. So that's why I actually started with series of endurances and projects that were kind of like in a borderline with being risky and stuff. So I went 59 feet under in the ocean without any training, previous training. It was first and last time in my life. And I also was walking to intersection of 59th latitude and 59th longitude, which actually in a very wild woods and wild in Siberia, and we were walking in for 6 hours. We were running out for 5, and we were working inside. It was rainy day. We saw imprints of bears and we saw imprints of boars, and luckily we didn't see them personally. So also some other projects like climbing 59 floors with video camera and stuff like that. So it was a series of endurance performances. One of the projects one of the early projects in my career, it's a project that became basically, I think it was originally started even in the School of Visual Arts and was installed in the spring of 1996. It was a project, National and Geographic project, and National Geographic also became, by just situation, it became my first digital project as well, or one of the first digital projects. Back in '96, it was project when I kind of like learned American history through this project. I learned the history of American flag. I learned history of presidents in America, and again, history that we didn't study back in Russia. And I knew in Russia that the first May 1st demonstration was in United States. I think it was in Chicago, but I didn't know about anything about American flag or American system, American politics and stuff like that. So it was a project learning process. And of course, National Geographic became first of my digital project because first installation was in 1996. It has some elements of election year, and it was good that it was in 1996. Basically, reason that it had elements of election year because 1995 and 1996, that when I actually first got my in my life was presidential, whole presidential campaign, and so I never had it before, and of course I hardly went to elect someone in the Soviet Union, but anyway, it was first a campaign that was for me very shocking, and my kind of like survival reflection was this project is part component of National Geographic project. So it was first exhibited in 1996 during the election year. It was second as an installation. It was secondly exhibited as an installation as well in 2000, and it was again election year. It was in Cleveland Gallery, and then at the same time in 2000 it became a digital project, and I was working on basically kind of translation of installation into digital art. And the interesting moment that it was supposed to be like media required a new approach, and it was very interesting for me to actually experience that particular requirement from the media and create a new project. It's kind of based on installation project, and of course obvious difference is that installation could see as many people, but still not as many as, of course, as whole the world can see it at any time online. So it was very important to realize it and actually experience it at this point. And I'm also very pleased that Vilcek Foundation kind of like revoked this project, and it came, to life again this year, 2012, the year of new election year. So another project, which is city drawing, and city drawing project started in 2009, and of course it started with the thrill itself of turning city into the canvas, and basically my relationship to studio or to easel. I don't even actually have an easel, and I never used easel as a artist. And also as an artist, I don't understand like home and studio situation. I had studio several times in my life, separate from where I lived with my kids. But anyway, it's always was awkward. In other words, I needed always to wake up and go to sleep in a place where I work, and it's kind of like it was a requirement. And in a situation like home studio situation, I don't understand the home component. What it's for. So, and the same with easel. I'm not doing any projects or any paintings and stuff. I'm not working on easel. So, kind of like city drawing, it was important project beyond studio situation. Like when you're actually creating in the world, you're creating in the space of the city. And of course, cities themselves, they are so interesting conglomerate of history of building of how cities created themselves, how they were growing, how they expand, how they build itself, how whole entire system of streets and stuff, how this all happened through the years. And it's a project. It's kind of like installation project by itself, like any city in the world, and drawing the same symbol in each city, in different cities, and drawing them. I have some requirements. It's the same lengths. Every city has the same lengths of the trajectory, and it's 59 miles in United States, and it's 59 kilometers in other places. So it changes this meter system, but metric system. But at the same time, drawing these symbols, it reveals somehow not only the picture of the city, but it reveals their kind of like inner structure, their kind of alternative portraits. And if you look through the city, if you look one after another, and there are already 25 cities right now drawn, and you could see the differences. You could see their kind of like characters, different characters in each time. And of course, this is a mixture of character of the city and possibility of of drawing itself. Another idea behind this behind city drawings project, it's creating something that is not three-dimensional. It's not existing generally. You cannot observe. And even I was thinking about if there was no digital component to this project, if I would still draw these drawings, and I would probably still do them just as a performance, just drawing inside of the city those symbols. But thanks to digital media, thanks to tracking system, and thanks to Instamapper itself, like open source, in this case I'm using Instamapper, and Boost phone I was using for many years. Now I'm using my iPhone. So this became actually documented. It's possible to document it, possible to track all the different movements of the car and stuff like that. So it is incredible, and it's an incredible tool by itself, and it's an incredible situation. And this way I could actually create work that was not doesn't have any body of work in three-dimensional space, but it's only it was done manually, but it's also exists only on a map. And the last project, it's a Constellation project. That's also kind of like the most recent project, because city drawings they started in 2009, and they're still going on, and they are going on until we get 59 city drawings, and they may continue, but so far the goal is 59. And how we're choosing these cities, it's a pure chance. It's just basically it's a trip of opportunities, and or any other situations that coming. Sometimes it's also cities that mean something to me, like in my life, where my family lives, or where we're doing projects, because we're doing kind of like project US 59, and we came to it goes through the Houston. So Houston was there, and we just draw Kansas, which is really comes really close to Kansas City too. So it's either some other trips that I am taking, or some other situations. So it's not really a planned. All those cities, like for example, I visit Australia, and I visited different countries, and I was doing drawings as I go. So if I come for any other reasons, I am doing drawing for this city. So it's kind of like part of fate, or kind of how life is going, and what's going in life. And of course I'm open to any other opportunities, so any invitations, if somebody invites, or if anybody gets some ideas for the cities, of course it would be very timely right now. And I also have to say that a lot of people actually took part in drawings, and not every drawing I was drawing myself. There were my kids, my sons, there were my friends, there were my family. My husband took a lot of also parts in all my projects. And so it's a collaborative work in many ways. And the final work is Constellation, that actually started in the summer of 2011. It's last year. The idea to create a constellation out of Starbucks, it was just came, first of all, because a component of the word Starbucks, the star. Second, because it was a lot of Starbucks in the Midtown Manhattan, it was looked like Constellation. And third, it was interesting as a Constellation project. It was interesting for basically creating a kind of imprint of our time, because our time is a transition, probably the most kind of like right word to describe it, because transition, we kind of live in transitional stage, and it's everything is not for a long time. Everything is so rapidly changing in our environment. Well, we hope an environment is not as rapidly, but it's rapidly changing in our technological environment. So, as an example, we have I don't know, we have iPhone S4 right now. In a few months, it will be S5 or any other model. So we're basically having buying iPhone today and having it today. We know already that it's transitional state of this device. It's not gonna be the last one, and it's gonna be another. So we kind of like we grabbing something for a moment, and then we move on and move on and move on all the time. So this is kind of like character of our time, and imprinting, like making kind of a picture of this moment, which is very transitional. That was a major idea of project. Constellations, and at the same time, of course, make an imprint of our time as what is happening here, and what could be changed tomorrow, could not, but basically what is happening, kind of like heroes of our time, like points that of importance, or just points that we have right now, and so the same, like comparing to the sky, where regular constellations are like regular star constellations, traditional stars, I would say. It's really, comparing to that, it's sky is also kind of cultural place for parallel reality. And now we have this second parallel reality, of course, on internet, and it became our second life, and we have a lot of stuff going on there, and basically this was a comparison, internet to the sky, and if we have this second life, or we have this parallel reality, so there are supposed to be some constellations there as well. And first constellation was again the Starbucks constellation, because of constellation of Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And second constellation, as I was working on this project of Starbucks, Borders, these bookstores that were quite important in many rural areas and quite famous, they closed, they were closing through the US locations. And when they closed, we were kind of like following them, and we were documenting the kind of afterlife situation with these stores, and by following them, by basically visiting the space where Borders were before and making documentation of the space, we were drawing. It's Hiram Levy, my husband, and I. We were drawing Constellations itself. So that's 3 projects that were chosen for the dARTboard for Vilcek Foundation, and I am very honored to be an artist and first recipient of this award, and I'm thankful to everybody who is working on it, who was working on it and is working on it right now.
Are you interested in any other numbers after 59?
It's still funny. Okay, since 59 was designed not to have any reasons, so I do need a reason to switch to another number, which doesn't make any sense because it doesn't has to have any reason. So I am not against any other number, and it's just a number I'm working with. And I mean, it's just a number, it's a tool that helps me to kind of get into different issues. And it's just a useful tool for me. And since I'm working with it already for 15 years, I'm working with this project for 15 years, it's part of family. So I don't have any plans to switch, but if there is any opportunity, of course, I would be happy to.
Do the cities in city drawings have any meaning, and why were they chosen?
City drawings, again, they were chosen because just in a life situation, like either by trips, my private trips or professional trips, and also they were chosen by some kind of importance to or significance to me or to Project 59. In other words, some cities that are staying on routes number 59, and basically I am trying to on each under each drawing there is a description why this drawing was drawn in this particular city. So I am kind of explaining why it's happening, and if there is any plan, there is no plans because it's going by ear. It's going by life as it as it goes. So right now I don't have plans for next drawings, but I don't have for all drawings.